Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Let me ask you something. Why does that one person keep invading your mind? Why can't you stop thinking about them, even when you know it's not helping you? Maybe you're working, scrolling, or trying to fall asleep, and their face just flashes in your mind again and again. You tell yourself to move on, but it feels like your brain refuses to cooperate. That constant replay isn't random, it's psychological. And if this has become your habit, I need you to know that 3 powerful things are happening inside you right now, and they go much deeper than missing someone. Before I explain, take a second to subscribe and like this video. It helps me reach more men who deserve real answers about what's happening inside their minds, not surface-level cliches. Here's the truth. When a person occupies your thoughts too often, it's not just emotion, it's addiction. You're not just thinking about her. You're chasing the chemical reward your brain releases every time you replay a memory, a text, or a moment with her. It's dopamine, your brain's favorite drug, the same chemical that floods the system of a gambler waiting for a win or a smoker lighting another cigarette. When you keep thinking of her, your brain rewards you with tiny hits of that same chemical, creating a loop of craving and relief. That's why you feel pulled toward those thoughts, even when they hurt. You're literally hooked on the emotional high of remembering her. But here's the hidden danger. Each time you give in, your brain reinforces the neural pathway that says, thinking about her feels good. That's why the thought patterns grow stronger, not weaker, over time. You start to believe she's special or the one. But it's not fate. It's repetition. You've wired your brain to connect comfort with her image, and that's what keeps you stuck. What you think is love may just be your nervous system clinging to the last source of emotional certainty it recognizes. This is why moving on feels impossible. It's not weakness, it's biology. But biology can be rewired, and that's where the real shift begins, when you stop feeding the cycle and face what your thoughts are actually protecting you from. When you can't stop thinking about someone, it's not just your emotions running wild, it's your mind trying to fill a void. The second thing that happens is what psychologists call emotional displacement. Your brain attaches meaning, comfort, or closure to that person because they've become the symbol of something deeper you haven't yet faced. Maybe it's loneliness, maybe it's rejection, maybe it's the fear that you weren't enough. But your subconscious doesn't want you to sit with that pain directly, so instead it hands you an image, her, and every time you think of her, you're really trying to think about yourself without realizing it. That's why these thoughts feel so obsessive. They're not about her anymore. They're about your unfinished emotional business. She's become the placeholder for your unmet needs, the mirror reflecting your own emptiness back to you. When you keep replaying her words, her laughter, her silence, it's your mind saying, here's where you lost something important. You see, men are conditioned to avoid emotional introspection. You're taught to solve problems, not feel them. So instead of dealing with the pain, you fixate on the person who caused it. It's safer that way, because if you ever stopped thinking about her, you'd have to face what's left behind. The truth that you tied your sense of worth to her attention. That's a brutal realization most men never reach. But here's the irony. She doesn't even need to be around anymore for your body to keep reacting as if she is. You see her name, or smell her perfume, or hear a song, and your nervous system lights up like she's right there. You're reliving emotional memories, not real moments. That's why, no matter how much you tell yourself you're over her, you feel that sharp pull when something reminds you of her. Your mind is trying to heal itself by replaying what it can't accept. But healing doesn't come from repetition. It comes from reconstruction. You have to take back what you projected onto her, because what you're missing isn't her. It's the version of yourself that felt alive when she saw you, the man who believed he was wanted. You can rebuild him, but only by bringing that power back home. When you can't stop thinking about someone, it's not just your emotions running wild, it's your mind trying to fill a void. The second thing that happens is what psychologists call emotional displacement. Your brain attaches meaning, comfort, or closure to that person because they've become the symbol of something deeper you haven't yet faced. Maybe it's loneliness, maybe it's rejection, maybe it's the fear that you weren't enough, but your subconscious doesn't want you to sit with that pain directly. So instead, it hands you an image, her. And every time you think of her, you're really trying to think about yourself without realizing it. That's why these thoughts feel so obsessive. They're not about her anymore. They're about your unfinished emotional business. She's become the placeholder for your unmet needs, the mirror reflecting your own emptiness back to you. When you keep replaying her words, her laughter, her silence, it's your mind saying, "Here's where you lost something important." You see, men are conditioned to avoid emotional introspection. You're taught to solve problems, not feel them. So instead of dealing with the pain, you fixate on the person who caused it. It's safer that way, because if you ever stopped thinking about her, you'd have to face what's left behind. The truth that you tied your sense of worth to her attention. That's a brutal realization most men never reach. But here's the irony. She doesn't even need to be around anymore for your body to keep reacting as if she is. You see her name, or smell her perfume, or hear a song, and your nervous system lights up like she's right there. You're reliving emotional memories, not real moments. That's why no matter how much you tell yourself you're over her, you feel that sharp pull when something reminds you of her. Your mind is trying to heal itself by replaying what it can't accept. But healing doesn't come from repetition. It comes from reconstruction. You have to take back what you projected onto her, because what you're missing isn't her. It's the version of yourself that felt alive when she saw you. The man who believed he was wanted. You can rebuild him, but only by bringing that power back home. The third thing that happens when thinking about someone becomes a habit is something most men never realize. It's your identity trying to redefine itself. When someone enters your life and triggers strong emotions, they don't just occupy your mind, they reshape it. You start to measure yourself through their eyes, how they saw you, how they reacted to you, what they gave or withheld. It all becomes data your brain uses to rebuild your sense of self-worth. That's why losing that connection feels like losing yourself, because for a while, who you were existed through how she saw you. When you constantly think about her, your mind isn't just reminiscing, it's trying to rebuild an identity that feels broken without her reflection in it. You're not obsessed with her, you're obsessed with the version of you that existed when she was around. The confidence, the attention, the validation, it created a temporary illusion of wholeness. And now that it's gone, your mind keeps searching for it, hoping that thinking of her will somehow bring it back. But here's the painful truth. The longer you hold on to that mental image, the more you lose yourself in someone else's story. You stop living from your own center. Your energy drains into a person who isn't even in your life anymore. And that's how men slowly disconnect from their purpose. They trade focus for fantasy, clarity for nostalgia. You end up living in the past, addicted to emotional echoes instead of building your present. Here's the part most people don't tell you. Your mind wants closure, but closure rarely comes from the other person. It comes when you decide to stop outsourcing your emotional stability. The moment you stop expecting her to return, to apologize, or to validate you again. That's when your brain begins to heal. It's not about forgetting her, it's about remembering you before she became the center of your thoughts. When you realize that her absence isn't the wound but the mirror, everything changes. You stop asking, "Why can't I stop thinking about her?" and start asking, "What part of me am I avoiding by doing this?" Because once you face that part, her power over your mind collapses completely. And for the first time, you stop surviving the past and start reclaiming your peace. When your mind keeps looping back to one person, it's not random, it's a signal. Your subconscious is trying to teach you something that your conscious mind keeps avoiding. Attachment isn't just emotional, it's chemical, behavioral, and deeply patterned. And once you understand how it works, you can finally take control instead of feeling controlled. See, every time you think about her, especially with emotion, your brain fires the same neural pathways that were active when you were with her. The same patterns, the same chemical rewards. Your body doesn't know the difference between memory and reality. That's why the thought alone can make your chest tighten or your stomach drop. It's your nervous system reliving the experience as if it's still happening. Now here's the uncomfortable part. Your brain learns through repetition, which means the more you think about her, the more your mind associates familiarity with safety. Even if she hurt you, even if the relationship relationship was chaotic or unfulfilling. Your brain will still choose familiarity over peace because it fears uncertainty more than pain. And that's why it's so hard to break free. You're not weak, you're wired for attachment. But wiring can be rewired. This is where most men sabotage themselves. Instead of breaking the mental habit, they feed it. They check her socials, scroll through old messages, replay her voice. Each small action gives the brain another microdose of dopamine, reinforcing the loop. You can't heal in the same environment that's keeping you hooked. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop participating in your own mental captivity. Here's the psychological truth. Detachment begins the moment you replace reaction with observation. Instead of judging yourself for missing her, watch your mind like a scientist. There it goes again, seeking comfort. The moment you can observe instead of obey, you weaken the emotional charge. That's how awareness breaks addiction, slowly, quietly, powerfully. And as that mental distance grows, something incredible happens. You start feeling the return of your own energy. The things you once ignored, your goals, your body, your peace, begin to pull you stronger than the memories ever did. That's the shift. You stop orbiting around her and start rotating around your purpose. And in that silence, your power returns, steady, quiet, and completely yours again. There comes a point where you realize that constantly thinking about her isn't love anymore. It's resistance. You're not holding on to her. You're holding on to the version of yourself that existed when she made you feel significant. That's what men don't often understand. You're not addicted to her. You're addicted to the feeling of being chosen, desired, and understood. And once that's gone, your mind keeps chasing the last person who made you feel it, because it doesn't know where else to find that emotion again. But here's where you begin to wake up. You start to see that the person you're thinking about is no longer real. She exists as a memory, frozen in time, unchanging, while you're evolving. Every time you revisit that version of her in your mind, you step out of the present moment and into a fantasy built from fragments. You stop seeing who she truly was and start seeing who you wanted her to be, and that illusion can keep you trapped for years. Your mind is incredibly powerful. It can turn an emotional memory into a spiritual anchor, keeping you tied to someone long after they're gone. That's why real healing doesn't start with forgetting her. It starts with forgiving yourself. Forgive yourself for overthinking, for checking her profile, for still missing her when you know better, for mistaking obsession for connection. These aren't signs of weakness. They're signs of humanity. It means you loved deeply. But now it's time to love wisely. When you stop fighting the thoughts and instead meet them with understanding, something changes. You start seeing your mind not as an enemy, but as a wounded part of you asking for direction. Each time you choose presence over fantasy, you reprogram your brain to feel safe again without her. You begin to associate peace, not chaos, with love. And that's when you know you've grown beyond her. Because eventually you stop needing closure. You stop checking, wondering, comparing. You realize that what you lost wasn't the love of your life. It was the illusion that someone else could complete you. The man who learns that truth becomes unstoppable because his peace no longer depends on who stays or who leaves. One day, you'll wake up and realize something powerful. The silence that once scared you now feels like home. The thoughts that used to pull you into a spiral start to fade. Not because you forced them to, but because you finally outgrew them. That's the ultimate psychological shift. When the mind stops chasing what it no longer needs to survive. When you make it a habit to think about someone, your brain builds them into your identity. But when you learn to observe your own thoughts instead of drowning in them, you slowly reclaim that identity piece by piece. You stop reacting, stop clinging, and start seeing. You start noticing how your emotions rise and fall like waves, and how you can stand still in the middle of it all without being swept away. That's not numbness, it's mastery. The truth is, the person you keep thinking about is not your destiny. They were your lesson. They came into your life to reveal what still needed healing, what you still feared losing, and how much power you'd unknowingly handed away. Once that lesson is learned, your mind will stop reaching for them because the purpose of that attachment has been fulfilled. That's what real emotional closure feels like. Peace without answers, calm without contact. And here's the most profound part. When you no longer need someone to occupy your thoughts, you create space for your true self to return. You start to remember the version of you that was confident, focused, grounded. The man who didn't chase attention because he was attention. The man who didn't seek validation because he knew his worth. That man isn't gone. He's been waiting beneath all those thoughts, waiting for you to stop living in her shadow and start living in your own light. So if you find yourself thinking about someone constantly, don't hate yourself for it. Understand it. You're witnessing the exact moment your brain tries to evolve beyond attachment. Let it happen. Don't interrupt it. Because when you stop feeding the obsession and start feeding your growth, something extraordinary happens. The person who once haunted your mind becomes the reason you finally woke up to your own strength. You were never meant to lose yourself for love. You were meant to find yourself through it.